Pickle.
Yes.
Let's get to some Monday headlines. Monday headlines. You and I are fundamentally news people. We are news reporters, news journalists, news gatherers.
I like news
mavens.
gatherers.
We are
Gatherers
we are
and
news
hunters of news.
Hunter-gatherers. And so we've been off for a week, so there's a fair amount of stuff to get to across the state of Texas. We're going to start with the transfer portal, because the transfer portal be poppin', okay? There is a lot of stuff in the a lot of players in the transfer portal right now, and in fact, if you go to TexasFootball.com, we have our 2021 Texas College Football Player Movement Tracker. Okay, what that is basically like the transfer portal. You know what I mean? But we're tracking as much as we can things, players who are leaving, maybe if they're declaring early for the NFL draft, as well as teams, Texas teams that are adding players, as well as teams who have entered the transfer portal. We mentioned a few of them as the big ones have come off. For example, Charlie Brewer, the quarterback at Baylor, is transferring to Utah for his senior season.
Another one doing the same.
Yeah, you got
Jaquindon Jackson.
Jaquindon Jackson is a big one out of Texas. He is transferring. He is going to transfer to Utah as well. Speaking of Texas transfers, Keontae Ingram is transferring to USC, which seems relatively important. I thought this was interesting. Xavier Alford, the star defensive back for Shadow Creek, who is in Texas, is transferring to USC as well. So they're making some hay there as well.
Yeah, Graham Harrell's dipping into that Texas connection.
Yeah, a few others that are noteworthy, I would say. I think we were off when Kellen Mond declared for the NFL draft. We might have been. But he was, by the way, the Senior Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
But he declared for the NFL draft, so he is going to be heading off to the NFL draft as well. Other ones that have entered the transfer portal as well, I thought it was notable that quarterback Alan Bowman. Alan Bowman is transferring. He is from Texas Tech, a guy who just could never stay healthy.
No.
A guy who could never, stay on the field. I wonder where he's going to end up landing. It'll be very interesting to see where he ends up. Jalen Polk, the wide receiver from Texas Tech, is also transferring. Keshawn Carter is transferring to Houston. He's a kid from the Woodlands, so that's makes a lot of sense going home. And then elsewhere, other ones, you can check out the whole list at TexasFootball.com in our player movement transfer or player movement tracker. But we're trying to keep track of them. If there are any that you miss, there's also, by the way, a fair amount of additions, that you can check out there as well. But TexasFootball.com is where you can find the player movement tracker if you want to keep track of the comings and goings in college football. So there is that. Let's also talk. Stick on Texas football. Stick on TexasFootball.com for a moment, and stick on college football for a moment. As we are now starting to get a feel for what Steve Sarkisian's staff is going to look like at the state or at the University of Texas. Of course, he's the new coach there for the Longhorns, if you've been sleeping. And a lot of things that they are doing, they are bringing in he's really flexing his muscles as far as his connection to Alabama.
Yes.
One of them, for example, is that they are bringing in Sarkisian's likely going to call the plays, but their offensive coordinator is going to be Kyle Flood, moving in from Alabama over to take over as offensive coordinator at Texas. They are retaining a few guys from Tom Herman's staff, including, I thought, a big one, Andre Coleman, the wide receivers coach, is going to stay there. One of the big ones that came down, I believe this was while we were on the break, or if it wasn't, then we didn't mention it enough, which is Jeff Banks. Jeff Banks is going to come over and be the he's going to come over and be the special teams coordinator, tight ends coach, and assistant head coach. You're probably thinking, okay, special teams and tight ends coach. Why do I care about that?
Right.
The reason that Jeff Banks is a big get for Steve Sarkisian is Jeff Banks is a recruiting ace. He is one of the guys that is really impactful as far as Alabama's recruiting is concerned. So to grab him and to bring him into the fold at the University of Texas figures to be pretty noteworthy. Finally, the other big one, which definitely came down while we were on break, was that Texas is hiring, and I'm going to work on his name, as their defensive coordinator, the Washington defensive coordinator, Pete.
Yeah.
Kwiatkowski?
I
think
believe so.
Kwiatkowski. There is an illegal. I'm throwing a flag. There's an illegal use of a consonant in there. But Kwiatkowski is coming on. He was the defensive coordinator at Washington the past couple of years, and that's a pretty decent get there for them. Also bringing in Bo Davis as their defensive line coach.
That one's much easier to say.
Bo Davis, yeah. I need to get a win in that one. So a lot of movement there. We are starting to get the shape of what the staff will look like under Steve Sarkisian at the University of Texas. Let's now move on and talk about the other thing we have at TexasFootball.com, which is it's step bomb season. It is step bomb season. Did you see my video? It is step bomb season. I did see it. Do you have it here?
No.
Oh, you should have. That's a shame. But the Texas high school football coaching carousel is spinning, twirling towards freedom, and a lot of big moves have come down recently. Most notably, I would say the one that probably caught the most people by surprise was Chad Rogers leaving Denison to go take over at Tioga. Class 2A Tioga. He's leaving Denison, 5A Division II, a playoff team, a guy that's got one of the best prospects in the state in J.D. Price at the running back spot, leaving there to go to 2A Tioga. And I think there's a lot of questions as to why. And I think those are understandable. A couple of things I will say. One thing is you never know what family situations are like. You never know what as far as let's put it this way: does Mama like to live in a small town?
Yep.
Would Mama prefer to live in a small town?
Oh, yeah.
That's a huge thing.
And he's got kids too.
There's family issues. You got to wonder what are there. We also don't know what the pay situation is going to be quite frank. So I'm always hesitant to jump on this and say that's a weird hire. I understand it from the outside perspective of like, why would you leave Denison, a 5A Division II program, to go to Tioga, which is a program most people have never really even heard of.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one thing that I think caught a lot of people by surprise.
The other Chad.
What's that?
Warrell leaving.
Yes, that was the other one.
Chad season.
It is Chad season. Brock is looking for a coach. As Chad Warrell, the only coach that Brock has ever known, of course, led them to the state championship in 2015 and has been a perennial power there in the 3A level. Chad Warrell is leaving to go take over at El Campo. He's leaving to go south down to the coast to take on the Ricebirds. Coach Wayne Condra retired after the 2020 season, leaving that opening. We'll probably have another conversation about this on an upcoming episode of Tep and Step because Step knows a lot of the inside details. I will tell you that the El Campo job was a very highly sought-after job.
Yes.
That is a job that a lot of people were in on. A lot of big names were interested in. And Chad Warrell was the one who ended up winning out and getting the job there at El Campo. He takes over a program that is, look, they're ready for prime time. They're a team that is absolutely loaded going forward. They're in win-now mode, and Chad Warrell is leaving Brock to go take over at El Campo. It figures to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I feel like with that one, you look at it as kind of like more linear. It more makes sense. You go from the smaller school to the bigger school, but I think that we all wondered, too, was Warrell one of those guys who was just going to say, no, I'm happy here at Brock. I'm not leaving. It doesn't – I don't need the level up.
Speaking of a big-time small – so Brock is open. Speaking of big-time small school openings, one that I want folks to keep an eye on is in Central Texas. Cameron Yo's open. Tommy Brashear has stepped down after 5 years there at Yo. He went 41-19, went 11-3 back in 2016, which is his best season. Cameron Yo is another big-time program and another big-time small school opening that I think is going to get a good list of applicants. The other one in that area that I think is going to be interesting, keep an eye on Troy. Troy is open as well. That kind of same area, same district actually, down there in Central Texas. Keep an eye on both of those. The other one, and so if you go to TexasFootball.com, we've got the TexasFootball.com/coaching-changes. We've got all the coaching changes.
It's the helpful coaching changes now. Brought to you by North Texas Honda Dealers.
There's two more, yes. Brought to you by our friends at North Texas Honda Dealers. Two ones that I want to point out to and mention. One, you're going to see that Liberty Hill's open, okay? Jeff Walker, of course, passed away, sadly, during the season. His brother Kent took over and led them to the state semifinals. A remarkable story there there. I will just say this, and I don't have any inside information to Liberty Hill. It would be relatively surprising to me if Kent Walker didn't get the head coaching job.
I agree.
That strikes me as kind of obvious in my opinion, but I don't sign the checks out there in Liberty Hill.
66. When I saw it, my initial thought was that's a formality of them having to open a job, but again, we don't know, but I agree completely. That would be surprising.
That strikes me. I think they have to open it up, but I think it's one of those things that they know who they're going to hire. It is listed as open. Don't freak out about that.
I feel like that's legally you have to open the job.
The other one that I just want to keep, I want you to put a pin in. Okay. First of all, San Angelo Central's open. Brent Davis left after 12 years. He's going over to take over at Gregory Portland. That's rather interesting. So San Angelo Central, big. Of course, anytime that comes open, it's a big job in the Concho Valley.
Yep.
The DFW area, I want you to keep an eye on Waxahachie. Okay. Coach Todd Alexander stepped down after 3 seasons. They were 8-22 over the course of the last 3 seasons. They were 5-5 last year. They made the playoffs last year, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not trying to be coy. All I am saying is that is a hot job, and there are a lot of pretty big names who are throwing their hat in the ring for it. Keep an eye on Waxahachie.
That one's got a lot of curb appeal to it.
Don't be surprised if we're coming on here in a couple of weeks or whenever they make the hire and saying we have a big splash to talk about. So that's one. TexasFootball.com where you can find all the coaching changes. Finally, one more coaching change is going down in the private school ranks. We don't talk a ton about private school ranks coaching changes because there's a lot. It's kind of hard to keep track of. But Argyle Liberty Christian has hired a new coach. They have hired a gentleman, a 38-year-old, by the name of Jason Witten.
Never heard of him.
Is his name. Jason Witten is the new head coach at Argyle Liberty Christian. That was announced by the school today. Liberty Christian he's taking over there at Argyle Liberty Christian. Of course, is he technically retired?
Yes.
Has he? So I know he was going to sign a 1-day contract with the Cowboys and retire. He may actually still be an active theoretical. Now he's taking a job.
Yeah, I was going to say if he will sign a 1-day contract, obviously it'll be next season because Cowboys aren't in the Super Bowl. But yeah, I would say then.
I think technically
he's still active.
I think technically he is still an active NFL player. He has said he's going to retire. He's going to sign a 1-day contract with the Cowboys and retire as a Cowboy. Yeah. He is taking over as the head coach at Argyle Liberty Christian. From what we understand, and I don't know the ins and outs there at Argyle Liberty Christian, from what I understand, his kids are in that system, and that his oldest son, is an 8th grader. He's about to be a 9th grader, and so as a result, he would get to coach the kid. From what I understand, it's a pretty family thing. He lives up there in that Argyle area. So, head coach at Argyle Liberty Christian, future Hall of Famer Jason Witten. And so, Coach Witten, let me just say, please give us your questionnaire.
You don't get out of it.
Oh, man. I don't care if you're going to the Hall of Fame. Listen, I bugged Mike Singletary, okay? I bugged Sonny Detmer. I've bugged a lot of coaches, okay? I've bugged a lot of Hall of Famers. I ain't above bugging you, Coach.
No.
Get your questionnaire in. There you go. There's some headlines from around the state.